Well, let's be getting to going here. Chapter 42 of Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. Minley's got a long ways to climb to the top of the mountain. The sky around Minley was quiet as she walked on the red rope bridge. The only sounds she heard were those of her own breathing and the pounding of her heart in her chest. After the dragon and land had faded from view, Minley saw nothing except the night around her. With such a limitless landscape, she could not tell how far she had walked or how much of the bridge she had left. It seemed never ending. She began to wonder if she had walked an hour or days. But slowly, so slowly, Minley didn't notice. The darkness of the night lessened, and each step she took, the world around her became brighter. And with this light, Minley saw that the sky below her had somewhat become a vast lake of pure water, and the night clouds were made of floating lilies. And stretched before her in the distance, like a faraway coast, she saw a high wall that seemed to glow. The wall was smooth and creamy white, as if made out of pearl. It too seemed to be endless. Minley could not see where it began or ended. However, as Minley got closer, she saw a rounded opening in the wall just before her. And in that circular passage, a white rabbit stood like a jade statue. It was only when Minley stepped off the bridge and the rabbit started toward her that Minley realized it was alive. "Welcome," the rabbit said. "You're a little late. Did you have trouble with the monkeys?" Wow. Minley was too astonished to speak. The rabbit looked extremely like the one painted on her blue rice bowl. She nodded with her mouth gaping. "Well, let's go," the rabbit said. "You're going to have to keep it short with the old man. He's very busy and he hates unnecessary talk." Minley followed the rabbit through the round opening into a white courtyard and over a polished stone bridge that seemed to grow from the ground. As they passed over it, Minley saw the smooth water wave with gentle ripples and heard what sounded like faint drumming. To one side of her in the distance, standing out against the flat landscape, Minley saw the silhouette of a man cutting down a lone tree, his axe making a thumping rhythm. As he chopped, the branches of the tree shook. Leaves, blossoms, and seeds flew through the air and dropped into the water like raindrops. "Is that the old man of the moon?" Minley asked. "Him?" the rabbit said, following Minley's gaze. "Oh, no, that's Wu Kang." "Why is he cutting down the tree?" Minley asked. It seemed a shame to her that the only tree on Never-Ending Mountain was being cut down. "Questions, questions," the rabbit said. "I should make you wait to ask the old man of the moon. But if you must know, Wu Kang tries to chop down that tree every night." "Every night?" Minley couldn't help asking. "Yes," the rabbit said. "Here is the story of Wu Kang." And you wonder, what's happening with those leaves and seeds and branches as they fall into the water? Maybe you've kind of drawn some connections to that, things falling from the sky. Most thought Wu Kang was very lucky. His wife was beautiful and his children were healthy, and they all lived in a comfortable cottage on a farm in the country. His parents and elder brother lived with them, and his neighbors were faithful friends, but Wu Kang always wanted more. So when his crops thrived and flourished, he decided farming was not satisfying enough for him, and the day he reaped his most successful harvest, he told his friends that he was leaving the countryside to move to town. "Why?" they asked him. "I want more," Wu Kang said. "But we are so happy here all together," they said. "It is not enough," Wu Kang said. So he packed up his possessions, sold his cottage, farm, and land, and then with his wife and children, parents and brother, he moved to town. It was crowded and inconvenient in the smaller house, but Wu Kang was able to apprentice himself to a furniture maker, and his family began to adapt to their cramped home. However, the day he was able to carve a chair from beech wood was the day he quit and decided to move to the city. Why? His parents asked him. I want more, Wu Kang said. But we are happy here together, they said. It's not enough, Wu Kang said. So, with his wife and children walking behind him, Wu Kang left his parents and brother behind him and moved to the city in search of something more. Their new home was a small hut of earth squeezed between tumble-down houses on a filthy street, far away from the tight, cozy house in town or the comfortable cottage on the farm. Nevertheless, his wife and children adjusted to life in the city, while Wu Kang looked for satisfaction. But still, nothing was enough for him. After mastering the abacus, Wu Kang decided to quit the training to be a storekeeper. After learning how to hold a paintbrush, he stopped studying for a government position. Wu Kang always wanted more. Maybe you should try to become an immortal, his son said to him. You couldn't want more than that. I think, Wu Kang said, perhaps you were right. So Wu Kang packed a small bag and left his wife and children to find an immortal to study under. His heartbroken wife pleaded with him as he stepped out the door. Don't leave, she said. We are here together. It is not enough, Wu Kang said. Wu Kang searched and traveled long and far, and one night he found the Old Man of the Moon. At last, Wu Kang said, an immortal, Master, will you teach me? The Old Man of the Moon preferred to decline, but Wu Kang insisted and begged. So, with misgivings, the old man agreed and brought Wu Kang to Never-Ending Mountain. So the old man began to teach Wu Kang lessons full of wonder that common men would marvel at. However, Wu Kang, true to his nature, was unmoved and aspired for more. When the old man showed him how to obtain red threads from his granddaughter, the goddess of weaving, remind you of something? Traveling across the sea of stars on a bridge of night birds, Wu Kang watched and followed, but after 3 days was discontent. Master, Wu Kang said, there must be something more you can teach me. So the old man taught Wu Kang how to tie the threads of destiny, sealing the knots with a shaft of light from the moon. Wu Kang studied and copied, but after 2 days, he again grew restless. Master, Wu Kang said, I know you can teach me more. Hence the old man took out the sacred book of fortune and began to teach Wu Kang how to read its text. But after 1 day, Wu Kang exclaimed, there must be more than this. With that, the old man clapped the book shut. Yes, the old man agreed, there is. And without a word, the old man led Wu Kang to a barren area on Never-Ending Mountain. The old man knocked the ground with his walking stick, and from the rock a silver tree grew. As Wu Kang stared, the old man tied a string of destiny around him and the tree. The only things for me to teach you, the old man said to Wu Kang as he handed him an axe, are the lessons of contentment and patience. Only when you are able to cut this tree down will I know that you have learned them. Wu Kang shrugged and began in earnest to chop down the tree. Little did he realize that with every cut the tree grew back, and every blow only scattered the seeds from the tree into the night sky lake. So every night Wu Kang cuts the tree, tied by the strings of destiny. He cannot leave it and is fated to chop until he learns his lesson or until the end of time. That's the story of Wu Kang. Min Li walked silently after the rabbit finished his story, and for a while the only sounds were of the trees flying seeds into the water. Those seeds, Min Li said to herself, they are really falling through the sky to the earth. They are the seeds that fall onto Moon Rain Village. It's Wu Kang's chopping that makes the strange moon rain. The flowering trees grow from the seeds from the tree on Never-Ending Mountain. But just then Min Li's thoughts were interrupted by the rabbit, which had stopped suddenly. "In there," the rabbit said, motioning toward the circular opening through a stone wall, "is the Old Man of the Moon." Ooh. Chapter 43. Min Li took one step into the walled courtyard and then stopped. Countless red threads covered the ground like an intricate lace. Interwoven in the red strings were thousands and thousands of small clay figures, each no longer than her finger. Like a spider, in the exact center sat the Old Man of the Moon. He sat cross-legged with a giant book on his lap. His head was bowed over two clay figures in his hands, so that the most that Min Li saw of him was the top of his head. But she could see his delicate, wrinkled hands skillfully tying the figures with in his lap together with red string. A blue silk bag full of red strings lay open beside him, and Min Li felt a shock run through her as she saw it. She had seen that bag before. Deep blue silk, silver embroidery. It was the bag the Buffalo Boy's friend was carrying that starry night. She is the goddess of weaving, Min Li realized. She spins the red thread for the Old Man of the Moon. I knew there was something different about her. No wonder she knew how to find the king. The old man reached beside him for his walking stick, a bent, twisted wood stick, and tapped it on the ground. Silently, the clay figures floated from his hand and drifted in the air, then settled on the ground at opposite ends of the courtyard. The old man's thread still connected them, and the red line wove itself among other strands surrounding him. As Min Li stared, the old man looked at her. The silver hair of his beard seemed to flow like a glowing waterfall and disappeared into the folds of his robes. His dark eyes matched the blackness of the night sky. "Ah," the old man said, "it's you." Min Li nodded and bowed deeply. She would have kneeled on the ground, but she was afraid of disrupting the clay figures standing on the ground at her feet. "Well, come here then," the old man said impatiently, and he tapped his stick on the ground again, and with a sound like flapping of birds' wings, the clay figures moved, clearing a path for Min Li. "I know you have questions for me," the old man said. "Every 99 years, someone comes here with their questions. But I will only answer one. So choose your question carefully." One question? Min Li almost stopped walking in shock. If she was only allowed to ask one question, she could not ask Dragon's question for him unless she did not ask her own. Min Li felt like a fish gasping for air. What was she going to do? The memories of the hard work in the rice fields, her father's careworn hands, the plain rice in the dinner bowls, and Ma's sighs, washed up upon her like the splashes of a lake or water from the lake. She had to change her fortune, but she must ask how to do that. But when Min Li thought about Dragon, waiting for her patiently, it was as if she had been struck. And like seeds falling from Wu Kang's tree, images of the dragon rained upon her, their laughter as they passed the monkeys, his inward struggles walking in the woods, his echoing roar as he flung the green tiger into the air, and the kind hand he put on her shoulder when she cried, and the hopeful looks in his eyes as she left. "Dragon is my friend," Min Li said to herself. "What do I do?" Min Li's thoughts bubbled faster and faster like boiling rice. Every step she took seemed to throb, and Min Li wasn't sure if the pounding was her heart or Wu Kang's axe in the distance. As she passed the clay figures, she thought she could see the figures of the goldfish man, the buffalo boy, the king, and Da-Ah-Fu silently watching her. Min Li's feet seemed to ignore her pleas for slowness. Like the kite being pulled in, she was being drawn toward the Old Man of the Moon without delay. Before she could decide whose question to ask, Min Lee found herself facing him. The old man of the moon looked at her expectantly. His black eyes were unreadable in the night sky. Min Lee looked down into the open book on his lap, and she recognized the open page as the king's borrowed line. The smooth folds and the holes she had made in it when she had turned it into a kite were still there. Now, or yet now, the paper was invisibly fastened in the book, and with only a thin line, like a scar, showing that it had ever been removed. The words had changed again. There was a single line of words running down the entire page. As she looked, Min Lee realized for the first time she could read the words, or really the word, for the line was only made of one word, written over and over again, and that one word was thankfulness. And suddenly, like the light when the clouds move away from the moon, Min Lee knew what question to ask. "There is a dragon waiting at the bridge," she said. "Why can he not fly?" Chapter 44. Ma and Ba continued to wait for Min Lee, quietly and sadly. Even though they told themselves that they trusted Min Lee and believed that she would return, Ma spent most of her time looking out the window, lost in thought, while Ba grew older and grayer every day. And the only time they found comfort was in the evening, when Ba would tell a story to make the time pass faster. In the escape of Ba's tales, they could forget that Min Lee was not with them and imagine that she was still there listening. One evening, when the moon filled the sky, Ma spoke. "Husband," she said, "tonight I would like to tell you a story." Ba was slightly surprised, but he nodded, and this is the story she told. Once there was a woman who had a kind husband and a beautiful daughter. A great mountain shadowed their home, making the land that they lived on poor, and their house small, but there was always enough to eat, and the water always flowed in hot months, while a fire always burned during the cold ones. Yet the woman was not content. The woman begrudged the barren mountain and the meager land and swallowed her plain rice with bitterness. She frowned at the humble cotton of their clothes and sighed in resentment at the tight rooms of their house. Day after day the woman grumbled. When she heard stories of treasures of gold and jade, she was filled with envy. "Why do we have nothing?" she sulked in frustration. "We have no treasures, no fortune. Why are we so poor?" Her husband and daughter worked harder every day, hoping to bring wealth to their house. But the unfeeling land did not cooperate, and the house remained cramped. The clothes stayed modest, and there was always just enough rice for the three of them. The woman who remained unhappy, her displeasure grew like weeds, uncontrollable and tangling. The woman was so caught up in her dissatisfaction, she did not realize that she was planting seeds of discontent in her daughter as well. Until then, her daughter had been pleased with their life, but now she began to feel troubled. The rice that filled their bowls began to taste bland. The clothes she had liked for their colors now felt rough, and the house that she had run freely around in felt stifling. Finally, unable to bear the growing frustration, the daughter stole away in the middle of the night, vowing not to return until she could bring fortune back to her family. It was only then that the woman saw the stupidity of her behavior, for without her daughter, the house became too large and empty. She was not hungry for that extra rice. As the days passed in loneliness, fear, and worry, the woman cursed herself for her selfishness and foolishness. How lucky she had been. She was at last able to see that her daughter's laughter and love could not be improved by having the finest clothes or jewels. That joy had been in her home like a gift waiting to be opened. The woman wept tears for which there was no comfort, for all the time that she had been longing for treasures. She had already had the one most precious. Now wiser, the woman could do nothing but go to her husband, beg forgiveness for her actions, and hope to someday do the same with her daughter. She did not know if she would receive compassion from either, but she vowed she would wait for it. If necessary, she would wait like the mountain that shadowed them. That's Ma's story. As Ma finished, she sat herself down at Ba's feet, and like a child, she placed her head in his lap. Husband, she said, I've said that it was your fault that Minli ran away, and I was wrong. I am to blame. Minli knew I was discontent with our fortune. If I had not been, she would not have left. I am sorry. But Ba could not speak. The moon outside was so full it looked as if it would burst, and the moistness dampened his eyes. He placed his hand tenderly on Ma's head. Ah, good, the fish said. If you make happy those who are near, the ones who are far will come. Ma's head jerked, and she looked over at the fish, and then at Ba, her eyes wide. Did that fish say something? She said. Finish up tomorrow.